Hey everybody, this is Anthony with the VR Game Rankings YouTube channel, and of course you guys are tuned in to the daily vlog series. This is episode 94. It is Thursday, February 8th, and I tell you what folks, today we have a lot of various game announcements to go ahead and get into, so why don't we go ahead and dive into it. And there might be a little bit of game discussion towards the back half of this show if we can get there, but we do have a lot of game announcements, and let's go ahead and start it off with Sprint Vector. Yes, Sprint Vector has launched today. It is currently available. Now obviously we already knew that Sprint Vector was coming out today on February 8th for the HTC Vive and the Oculus Rift, and it is coming, I believe, next Tuesday on February 13th for PlayStation VR. But what we didn't know is how much is this game going to cost. And so the cost of Sprint Vector is $29.99, but it is launching with a launch discount, and this launch discount is 20% off. It is not the normal 10% off. You're getting 20% off, so the price until February 15th is going to be $23.99, so you get a relatively decent discount here. And this kind of brings me to the discussion that me and Gary had on the most recent episode of VR Roundtable. We were talking about Sprint Vector, and I was kind of inquiring about the price. And I was saying, you know, what do you guys think about the price? Now, I said I believe the price on the low side will be $29.99, on the high side $39.99, and I thought it would be somewhere in there. And Gary was a little bit surprised by this, and he kind of thought that even at $29.99, it's a little bit too high, and he thinks that would be a mistake. I think he kind of felt like $19.99 or $24.99 is a great price. And so it appears that Survios is kind of looking for a little bit of an in-between ground here by giving that 20% launch discount. So you're getting it for $24 if you buy it prior to February 15th. But then, of course, after that, the price jumps back up to $29. Now, personally, I feel like this game is a little bit underrated because in the open beta, we did get these 3 tracks that we could race on, and I thought all 3 tracks were awesome. I liked the music for all 3 tracks, incredibly colorful and all of that type of thing. And the full game features 11 tracks, and I believe it also has another additional, I forget how many challenge courses, but there's other tracks as well for like 21 total tracks or courses in the entire game, which I think that is actually a lot of content, even at a $29.99 price. This is kind of like VR's version of Mario Kart. Until we have something better, this is pretty much what that is, and I think the game's pretty damn good. And the good news is VR Roundtable did get a review code for this game, which I will be trying the full version of this game actually later today. I should have tried it last night, didn't get around to it, didn't get a chance, but I will try the full version of Sprint Vector later today. So on Friday's show, I should be able to talk about some more of the additional tracks that are available and just kind of the feel of the full version of the game and the differences with the open beta. So we'll definitely get into that on tomorrow's episode, but we do have more game announcements as well. So additional game announcements, Ark Park is coming on March 22nd. And so this was rumored to be the release date for Ark Park, but we did not have any kind of a guarantee. We weren't absolutely sure that Ark Park was coming March 22nd, but the official Ark Park Twitter has tweeted out that the game is coming on March 22nd to all of the platforms. It's coming to PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, and of course Steam VR as well, which includes the HTC Vive. So we do have Ark Park to look forward to. I believe 8 minutes of gameplay of this game kind of leaked onto YouTube, and some people are kind of wondering what really is the gameplay for this game. Like, is this going to be this dinosaur VR game that we've all been dreaming about? or is it going to be kind of a dud? I did hear one guy talking about it, and he was like, it almost seems like a phone game that they're putting into VR. I'm not so sure about it, blah, blah, blah. So we'll have to see as we get a little bit closer to that release date if we get some more gameplay trailers and more information along those lines. Okay. Additional game announcements, Drunkn Bar Fight. Now, we knew this was coming to PlayStation VR. This is coming from The Monkey, which is the developer of the game, and it has been announced that this game is coming next Tuesday for the PlayStation VR. Drunkn Bar Fight should arrive on February 13th for PlayStation VR. We don't have a price for this. And also the developer said that this is not absolutely locked in stone. They are planning for next Tuesday, but there could possibly be some unforeseen circumstances that could pop up and potentially delay the game. But right now it is on schedule for Tuesday. And I played Drunkn Bar Fight on the HTC Vive, and it's an interesting game, but I don't know. I always felt like it was a little bit janky in certain respects, but it is a fun game. It's not very expensive. It's kind of like Thrill of the Fight, or I'm trying to think how you would really describe it, but basically it's kind of an exercise game too. You will actually get a little bit hot and sweaty playing this game because you're throwing punches, you're grabbing bottles, you're smashing it over people's heads. And it's really quite interesting, but I don't know that it has that long-term gameplay that I'm kind of looking for, but it certainly is entertaining. It's definitely different. It is definitely not the average game that you're going to play for sure. So we'll see how PlayStation VR players react to this game on Tuesday, next Tuesday. And then in additional game release news, Superhot and Arizona Sunshine are coming to the PlayStation VR on disc. So both of these games are currently available. The digital versions have been available for a long time, but these games are getting actual Blu-ray physical versions, at least in the United Kingdom. Whether or not we'll actually get these in the United States remains to be seen, but I think this is a pretty good sign, because what this shows us is obviously Superhot and Arizona Sunshine. For both of these games to get actual physical releases means that PlayStation VR owners have been very receptive to these games. They've really liked these games, and these games have done well enough, they've sold well enough, that Sony believes, we probably should have a physical version of Superhot and a physical version of Arizona Sunshine. Whether or not we get those in the USA remains to be seen. But it's always interesting from a physical game standpoint, because with physical games, you can actually rent the games potentially. You can buy the game, play the game, and then sell it off later. Of course, you do have that inconvenience factor of actually putting in a physical disc, removing the physical disc. We've gotten so lazy. We don't really want to do that. We like the digital games where we can download it, we can instantly access it. But at the same time, there is some value in traditional ownership, I guess you can call it, actually having a physical disc. You can play the hell out of the game, and then if you don't like it anymore, you can sell it off. And there certainly is some value to that. Superhot, the physical version, is coming on February 28th, and Arizona Sunshine is coming on March 21st. And once again, this is European dates for these physical releases. We do not have confirmation yet that this is coming to the USA markets as well. Hopefully they will. It'll give people out there with subscriptions to, say, GameFly a chance to try the physical versions of these games. As we continue down the game announcement road, we have Townsmen VR, which is available today. Yes, Sprint Vector has launched today and is available on Steam. But there is another game available if you have an HTC Vive. I believe this is probably also available for the Oculus Rift as well, although I didn't actually check that. but Townsmen VR has entered early access. This game is going for $10. It is being brought to us by Handy Games, and this is kind of like a town building game or kind of a god game where you kind of have villagers, you move them around, you assign them different tasks, you have them create different buildings, and then your town starts to grow, kind of like Tethered, kind of like ActRaiser and some of these type of god building type games. And I do have the official Steam page description from Handy Games. I'll go ahead and read this off. Lean back, relax, and watch the bustling life of your villagers, or actively get involved to speed up processes and move workers and resources directly where they are needed. You are able to seamlessly change between the all-encompassing view of a god and the detailed view of a citizen, able to follow the colorful life of your village. There is a lot to discover, but watch out for the Black Knights plundering hordes. So probably what I'm thinking is with this game is you are going to set up your town situation and you're going to try to like build different buildings and kind of set up your defenses a little bit, and then probably every so often a wave of attackers kind of comes in, the Black Knights plundering hordes, and then you have to survive basically these waves of attacks and see how your city is shaping up after you've dealt with that. The interesting thing about this game, though, it is only $10. It looks relatively good, doesn't look too bad. Now, I have to admit, these are not really my type of games, even though they're incredibly colorful, and I really like the colorful, cheerful nature of the game, and they start out really well. I like the beginning of all these games, but what happens is they just get more manic and they just get more crazy, and basically it is a multitask simulator, really, is what it's all about. It's about having a million different things going on simultaneously, figuring out what you need to prioritize. And I eventually don't like it at a certain point. It's like Tethered. I played Tethered on PlayStation VR, liked it a lot for the beginning section of the game. But then as it starts to get harder and harder, I'm like, you know what? I don't really find this very fun or enjoyable. But I know there's tons of people out there that love this type of stuff. Obviously, we have Skyworld that came out a while back. And then Hidden Path Entertainment has Brass Tactics coming out later this month. Now, those are probably more hardcore strategy sim kind of real-time strategy games, more so than what Townsmen VR is. But this is an interesting game, and at the $10 price, relatively affordable, looks very colorful. So we're very interested to see what the early reviews are going to be on Townsmen VR. Okay, now I'm going to get into a game that was announced. I don't know if this was announced yesterday or the day before, but I had it on this, I had it as a story to cover, but then we didn't get to it. I was covering other things, ended up running out of time, but there is a major new game announcement, a new game that will be coming this spring. It is called Downward Spiral Horus Station, and this is coming to PlayStation VR, Oculus Rift, HTC Vive, and the Microsoft Windows mixed reality platform as well. So this is coming to basically every dedicated VR headset, and the easy way to describe Downward Spiral is it's kind of Lone Echo meets Dead Space or Event Horizon, which is kind of how I would describe it. Now, if it's as good as any of that, that would be awesome. The developer is Third Eye Studios. They are from Finland, and the developer Third Eye Studios has said that this game has been inspired by a number of different movies and TV shows, and they specifically mentioned 2001: A Space Odyssey. They mentioned Twin Peaks. They mentioned Black Mirror, and they also mention There Will Be Blood. And the one that kind of like, one of these is not like the other, and that is There Will Be Blood. So I'm certainly curious to see how that is going to play into it. I love Black Mirror. 2001: A Space Odyssey is awesome, especially with, you know, how the computer artificial intelligence that's on there is really cool. I really like that. And so if you watch the trailer for this, it does have that kind of event horizon, you know, that derelict space station that it's probably a story where it's like, we've lost contact. We haven't heard anything from this derelict space station for a couple of years. You're sent to go check it out. And there's always some crazy shit that goes down. And that's kind of what this game looks like. But it does have that zero-G locomotion that Lone Echo featured. And this is one of those things where when we got Lone Echo and we felt this zero-G locomotion, being able to grab on things and pull yourself and push yourself through the world, it just feels so natural, so normal, and it feels so right that we kind of knew there would be a lot more VR games that would feature this type of locomotion mechanic. And this is probably the first one that is going to hit after Lone Echo. So we do have this. Now, Third Eye Studios, one of the things that they talked about as far as this game Downward Spiral is that they are going to use visual storytelling, that there will be no traditional voiceovers, no audio diaries, no audio tapes that you find a la BioShock, no cinematics, that instead what they're going to do is they want you to discover the story. They don't want to tell you the story. They want you to discover the story, and they want you to discover the story through environmental cues and kind of have the story revealed in a more natural way. And so this game features single player, it features co-op, and it also has an 8-player competitive option as well. This game is coming in the spring. We don't have an exact release date for this game, but it is coming sometime in the spring. Guys, I gotta apologize. I don't know if you hear this, but there are dogs that are barking their asses off, and they're right over here. And the problem that I have is, and I apologize for this, honestly, I wish that I could like record this show at another time, maybe when these dogs aren't barking. The problem is I just never know. I never know when these crazy ass dogs are going to start barking, and so I just have to deal with it. What I really need to do is somehow create a soundproof studio. All I need is about $50,000. So if there's somebody super rich out there, shoot me 50 grand. I will make this a soundproof studio, and then there will be no more barking dogs, no more airplanes flying overhead, no more delivery trucks driving down the street. Unfortunately, it is a legitimate problem that I have to deal with, unfortunately, for this show. Some days I get lucky. There's no barking dogs, no airplanes, no nothing, and it's beautiful. Other days, nonstop barking dogs. It is what you have to deal with if you're in this business. Okay, so we have a little bit of time to get into some game discussion, and what I wanted to get into is, you guys remember the game Kin, the platformer that is on the Oculus Rift for $15? I've kind of raved about this game I don't know if I really raved about it on this show. I know I talked about it a little bit on this show, but I think in the most recent episode of VR Roundtable, I did kind of rave about Kin a little bit. And this is my number one go-to game right now. If I don't have a game to play from a standpoint of providing game coverage, like for example, when this show is over, after I've finished editing this and do everything that it needs to do and render it and upload it and all that, when I'm finally done with all that and I could just go play whatever I want, I will jump into Sprint Vector because I gotta play the finished final version of the game. I want to try all the other tracks and stuff. But if I don't have to worry about anything as far as game coverage, if I'm just playing a game for myself, for some reason, Kin is the game that I want to go to, and that is saying a hell of a lot. That speaks a lot for this game. But one of the things that I wanted to talk about in regards to Kin is when I first was playing it, I kind of thought about it as it's very much a platformer game, but actually the more and more that I play Kin, the more I realize that this is less and less of a platformer, and it's actually more of a puzzle game. In fact, it actually reminds me a hell of a lot of the Talos Principle VR. And you might think, this is a platformer and Talos Principle VR is like a hardcore puzzle game. How are these things connected? But the thing is, when you are in Kin, you are moving your little platformer character around this world. You do have to battle enemies. You have some different attacks that you can do. You can kind of freeze enemies with your little boomerang attack. You can throw it out. It kind of freezes enemies a little bit. You can also hurt the enemies with the boomerang. You kind of have a sword that you can go up and you can slash at the enemies and do that. You kind of have to learn the patterns of these enemies. You got to be careful in how you attack them because they are more powerful than you, and you can't just run up on them and try to be aggressive. You got to be smart about it. So there is this platforming, there is this action part of it in terms of the actual combat, but a big, huge part of this game is trying to figure out how to get your character from the one door that they come into the world to get to the door that moves to basically the next little stage of the game. And it can be quite complicated. I've been in some of these Kin levels and I'm thinking, man, I don't know what to do here. I've been stuck a couple of times where I kind of almost just wanted to give up. And I'm like, man, I'm spending all this time. What do? I don't understand. And then finally it hits me. Oh, okay, I need to activate this thing, which opens up this thing, which opens up that thing. And so it does have very much of a puzzle element to it. I'm still really liking the game. I actually have gotten to the second boss of the game, and the bosses are really good. The bosses are very hard to deal with. They are not easy by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm still enjoying this game, Kin. I still think it's a great value for $15. I think it's incredibly colorful. And what I said originally about it, where it's almost like you have this invisible table that is, you almost have this invisible table that's kind of coming up to your chest, and the world is kind of laid out over this table, and you're moving your little character around this world, and sometimes she's really far away and you can kind of barely see her, and then she gets closer. And I kind of really like how the world is laid out. It's incredibly colorful, beautiful. The music is great. I'm not saying this is like game of the year or anything like that. It's probably, I don't even know if I would put it in like the top 5 of VR platformers, but it's not like we have a ton of VR platformers to be able to choose from. So I think this is one of the better platformers, and there isn't, we're not overflowing with platformers in VR. And if you have any kind of retro sensibilities to yourself as far as gaming, I think this is one you will actually enjoy. So you might want to check out Kin if you get an opportunity. I haven't heard from anybody if this game runs well in Revive, if it looks good in Revive, runs well in Revive. I'm assuming it would. I remember playing Lucky's Tale. I basically played the entire game of Lucky's Tale through Revive, and it ran great. That was a platformer. It looked good, ran great. So I'm imagining Kin would run well on the HTC Vive as well. But if anybody has any firsthand experience with that, if you could leave information in the comments about that, then we could pass it along to everybody else. Alrighty, folks, that's pretty much going to go ahead and wrap it up for today's show. This, of course, has been episode 94 for Thursday, February 8th. I apologize for those barking dogs, but I mean, there's just nothing I can do about it. I could wait and try to record the show later, but they could be barking then. So you just never know. So I just got to bang out the show, do what I got to do, and move on to the next show. And tomorrow is Friday's show. We're talking about February 9th, episode 95 tomorrow, and I will definitely have my take on the full version of Sprint Vector. So look forward to that, as well as hopefully some more interesting news stories besides just all of these different game announcements. But it's great to hear about all these games that are coming. Definitely a lot of good stuff on the docket. So I will see everybody tomorrow on Friday. So have a wonderful Thursday. See everybody tomorrow. Later.